Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another breakdown. I am Paul, U.S. Army combat veteran, served in Afghanistan 2010 to 2011 as a platoon leader, personally led over like 300 combat patrols, earned a Bronze Star, combat action badge, and most important, brought all my soldiers back. And I have been doing breakdowns of the combat footage coming out of Ukraine, hoping to give you guys, the viewers, some more context about the military operations that we are seeing to the extent that I can. Again, these are always short footage, but what I do is I try to screen the footage before watching it to make sure that there's nothing really especially uncomfortable or grisly in it. But that said, this is still real combat footage. So if you're not comfortable, you definitely want to click away. Also, I try to just provide context, but sometimes what I do is may sound a little bit critical. But this is an essential part of military operations. After every single patrol, our unit would sit down and talk honestly about what went well, what went poorly, and what we were going to do different or better next time. And those sort of continuous self-improvements is intrinsic to military operations. Okay, having done all those caveats, let's get into it. So these are Russian paratroopers doing what in the US we'd call an air assault mission. This is where they infiltrate an objective, or I don't know, I guess maneuver to an objective via helicopter or helicopter insertion. So this is the flight view of the helicopter. This video was released by the Russian Ministry of Defense. Both sides, ministries of defense, have been releasing combat footage. That's to show usually the effectiveness of their fighting forces and help try to win the sort of morale battle or the public battle, both at home and abroad. Video mainly follows Russian airborne troops securing the airport without any visible resistance at the beginning of the Russian landing operation. Okay, so, all right, so these guys are in a what looks like a Russian transport helicopter. Let's see if we can look inside. This is them. It looks like the airport has already been shelled, subject to some preparatory fires. Again, in U.S. doctrine, it's sort of complicated. Air assault missions might not look like this. They might not be preceded by artillery fire, though you might see something like preparatory airstrikes happening minutes, maybe up to 2 hours before an air assault unit deploys or attacks that objective. Okay, so this says that this was during the second phase. Other Russian soldiers could already be seen on the ground. Yep, there they are. Normally what will happen is that your commander prior to an air assault mission is going to do their leader's recon. They're going to look at satellite imagery. They're going to look at maps and any other intelligence they have available. And they're going to say, okay, what's the best way to secure this airport? Now, securing airports is so essential to military operations because so much of a military's lifeblood is airborne. And that is both the ability to move supplies to and from a location on the battlefield, right? If you can do so via aircraft, you can get those supplies and troops to a location faster and often safer than if you had to take them over a long, dangerous roadway. You may not even have access, right, to the enemy may control parts of the road, and so your only option to move men and materials safely is via aircraft. So by owning a large airport, you can have a lot more of your military aircraft enter and take off continuously, allowing you to flood that area with supplies and soldiers, as well as evacuate things like wounded soldiers and potentially even some equipment in need of repair, right? You can just get things spirited back to the rear areas again, so you're not having to treat your seriously wounded in a field hospital. So there's a couple ways to do an air assault mission. One is that the helicopter lands and troops deploy out the back. This is usually the preferred method. It's just less dangerous. The other method, if there's no flat landing zone for a helicopter, is the helicopter may actually hover and have soldiers insert via either fast rope, basically go down via a rope, either a fast rope or a belay.
Атака слева.
Где он? Нормально, нормально.
Атака
Уходит,
слева.
налево уходит.
So these soldiers were supported by it says Ka-52 attack helicopters. We watched some footage of Ka-52s also engaging targets in and around an airport. It may have been the same operation. It may have actually been the preparatory phase of this operation.
Уходи, уходи. Он видит, да, все нормально.
Okay, so interesting. This is the standard land and deploy, right? So you can see other helicopters out here. Looks like they have, I'm actually surprised to see this. Russian airborne troops are some of their absolute best troopers. And they have what looks like maybe an RPG-7, so some basic light anti-armor stuff. Looks like an AK, probably the AK, one of their like 100 series. All right, so you can see what they're doing, and this is pretty standard, is to get clear of that helicopter as fast as possible, right? Those helicopters are big targets. They're loud. They are very distinct. Usually you can watch them come in, right? That their aircraft, they don't sneak up on anybody. And so they're getting clear of that aircraft. They're taking, in this case, concealed positions, a little way away from the aircraft, and they're setting up a basic defensive perimeter while the remainder of their troops deploy. Yep, talks about the armaments, light RPG variants, and AK, mostly with iron sights. This has been one of the things I've talked about in other videos, is there's been a strange lack of optics on Russian rifles. And it's a big question. Troops like this, airborne troopers, air assault troopers, they are some of Russia's best, and yet they don't have advanced red dot sight optics. This is something that every single soldier that, bar none, that I was deployed in Afghanistan with a decade ago would always have some sort of optic on their rifle, either a ACOG or an M68 standard red dot sight. The problem that I think you're seeing here is, first off, these Russian rifles, they absolutely have the rail system, and they're absolutely meant to accommodate aftermarket optics. If you've never shot with an optic before, it is a game changer. It is so much clearer, so much easier to see your targets and acquire them. It really is just a game changer. And these rifles are designed to accommodate them. They have the rails for it. But where are the actual optics? And some people argue that it's a function of poor Russian supply chain or poor Russian planning. I actually think it's more likely corruption, that the people producing these optics, advanced military optics, are so popular in the US civilian market. You can still go online and in many cases buy them. I checked as early as a few days ago, and there are still, for $400 to $500, advanced Russian military optics that you can buy off some like little bit gray market looking websites, but they will ship to the US, and I think that's what's happened here. I think a lot of these advanced combat optics have been diverted that were meant for airborne troops and are instead sold and resold and end up in the hands of collectors here in the US, airsoft players, you name it, right? Anywhere but the Russian troopers. Okay, so it looks like they actually are trying to do some friend and foe identification. You can see these yellow bands. Looks like somebody is a I don't know, an RTO, a radio telephone operator. He's got his comms piece and an antenna here. That may also be a commander. Okay, so he's got what looks like one of the modern Ratnik system backpacks. Airborne, so classic airborne true paratroopers, right? Jumping out of an airplane, deploying a parachute, will have their rucksack strapped around their leg. This is the advantage here. These guys come out of the helicopter and they are ready to fight. Generally, the Russian system has a upper backpack and kind of a lower backpack that work together. That's what it looks like this dude has going on here, like his upper backpack. But I may be wrong. This may be just a single like 45 liter. Yeah, so it mentions that some soldiers do seem to have EOTech sites, and it's possible that maybe EOTech is a US-based company, I believe. So it's possible they actually went and bought themselves sites as an aftermarket thing. But again, the average Russian conscript earns just $400 a month. So an EOTech would be a month's salary for a typical conscript, though airborne troopers probably earn a bit more than that. Okay, let's see if we can look up. Yeah, this is a small sort of mini backpack. Other than that, yeah, look, no optic, totally bare, just iron sights. Yep, and it's discussing this. They are setting up on probably key terrain of the airport. That commander, when he does his leader's recon, they're going to identify exactly where they need to hold to secure that airport. And right now, it's probably about securing landing zones. So you want to have your light infantry troops pushing out, making sure that there's no enemy close enough to the main helicopter landing zones, that those helicopters can safely put more troops and more material down. The danger of this sort of operation is that it is without actual combat aircraft that can land at the airport. You cannot get resupplied. Right? You can get occasional, sometimes resupplies from these helicopters, but you can see it would take a lot of helicopter operations. And so if you are unable to have either a ground convoy that can link up with you and get and reattach your supply chains, or you can get the actual airports secured and have combat military flights enter, you're going to run out of food and water pretty quickly. Again, you have to think that these are just full of troops right now, and these troops probably have 72 hours worth of gear with them, but they may not even have that much. Remember, it takes a lot of water and food to sustain operations, right? And the longer these guys have to be out here, the more they're going to need. They're going to need medical care to treat their casualties. They're going to need places to, not sleep and eat, but food, water, ammunition. They'll need to maintain their weapons, and all of that can involve a lot of helicopter flights. So it doesn't take much of an enemy presence to keep helicopters from landing. A few anti-air teams or a couple of very well dialed in mortars will cease helicopter operations entirely, meaning that it's pretty easy to get stranded out here if you don't have a plan to support these airborne troops within 72 hours. Russian Ministry of Defense said it took place the 24th of February. All right, so that was about a month ago. One of the things that, generally, I think, well, it's Russia, you can't really trust them, but usually they say nothing or they say true things. So it's like, most of the time with these sort of Ministry of Defense videos is that usually they will either leave out information that's not favorable, and so what they will provide is limited but correct information. Okay, so this looks like they're at some sort of far edge of the airport, maybe like an old corner of it. Yeah, so this is really interesting. First off, again, there you go. There's your more iron sights on this rifle. What sort of surprises me is that, one, the attitude is kind of cavalier. And it's not clear to me. I just have a lot of questions. People have talked about this, that the Russian troops sometimes don't appear to have a strong sense of urgency. They don't even appear to be fully aware that this is like a proper combat operation. Okay, so this is troops also had mortars with them. Okay, so this is them probably setting up a mortar. And you can see some other troops kind of running off here. Yeah, this is, honestly, I'll say this. If the airport, if they're not in contact with enemy troops, this level of like sort of controlled chaos is pretty normal for a military operation. There should be, in the US now, we would have security established much better than this. But when you hit the ground, there's going to be stuff that gets all messed up. These troops could have landed at the wrong LZ and have to relocate. Troops could have been actually dispersed across helicopters so that instead of a lucky shot taking out an entire company, right? Your entire, let's say, northeast corner security. Instead, it takes out a little bit of several different companies. So these companies could have to actually run around and link up with each other. It's not super clear on what the plan is, but this is definitely a mortar team getting mortars set.
Конечно, ребята, да.
Okay, so it sounds like, no, they're kicking mortars out and you can hear some firefights taking place. So it sounds like, in fact, there is still some fighting going on. And this was okay, so it says that a Ukrainian counterattack did end up taking the airport back. Yeah, this is sort of, okay, so again, I sort of get this idea of like, hey, you've got to secure this line. It's better than nothing. Yeah, I guess it's fine. I am sort of curious why this guy's facing away. This is almost like an ambush setup where you have a line of troops all facing the exact same way and then one guy facing behind, or maybe two. Yeah, this looks like maybe like a leadership team setting up on the perimeter. This is pretty typical using, if you can't, so if you have a situation where, let's back it up a little bit. Okay, so if you have an entrance or exit that you want to gain control of quickly, and you want to prevent the enemy from pushing through that, you want to block it somehow, but still allow friendly forces to enter, you can have your armored vehicles, if they're big enough and armored enough, they can become like a door. Literally, the truck backing up and pulling forward blocks that entrance. And you can see that's what it looks like they have here. This is a key choke point. Again, I have some questions. So normally you would want Overwatch, like you would want someone up here, and there may be, and they may just not be depicted. You would also not want to have all your troops right here at the very edge. You would want to have probably, again, I would put probably a machine gun and sandbags up on the roof here. You would want to have probably a 2 or 3 person like search element here, but this looks like there's like 5 or 6 guys, right? There's somebody up here on like a ladder. Yeah, this is a strange checkpoint operation, to be sure. There's another guy here. Someone else is out front. Again, I wouldn't put anyone out front like that, but they may be setting up additional barriers to slow down approaching vehicles. Yep, scanning the area, taking defensive positions, pretty standard. Yeah, so these guys, again, I'm just so curious about, I wish I could see the larger plan here. Because I'm having sort of a hard time making sense of it.
Вот он за.
Okay, this is literally different from what they were saying before. Oh, it might have been contested back and forth, and the Russians now hold it.
Пошли, все! Второй этаж проверили!
Шесть полсотни первый, 632.
Атака спереди. Тингер.
Okay, so they talk about how their stances are against the war, right? You guys should check out War Leagues. They're doing some of the best just raw reporting and releasing of this combat footage. Obviously, they try to keep it clean. There's 1 or 2 that I haven't felt comfortable displaying. Yeah, so these guys, okay, helmets are off. That's sort of a weird call.
Машины, скажи, чтобы машины не трогали, людей гражданских не трогали.
Okay, this is probably the closest, well, even this isn't that great a checkpoint. Okay, so when you run checkpoint operations, I'm sorry, if I look confused, it's because I'm really not sure what the plan is for this airport, how they plan on securing it. And I get it, operations are chaotic, but what's not clear to me here is, okay, this looks like a major avenue of approach, right? A major way in. And you can see they've somehow got vehicles in. So again, you're left with another question. Why do an airborne operation if your mounted troops can get to the area? But the other question I have is that there's no barriers here, nothing. So I guess they're just hoping that these armored vehicle, well, one armored vehicle and one transport vehicle, and looks like maybe another armored vehicle, like they're Bearcats or whatever, on the left side. But there's no physical barrier stopping these. U.S. troops would be deploying concertina wire all along here so that approaching cars or vehicles of any kind would have to stop and start to maneuver. They would also probably just try to find more of a choke point. They may also, instead of having these vehicles fully exposed, have this one park behind in this cover if it's not going to be used as a physical barrier itself. Yeah, all this looks pretty typical of sort of a patrol, right? Yeah, are they a little dense? Yeah, they're a little packed together given that there's a real threat of aircraft, but this may be a case of where they're treating this like they're in Syria, where the threat mix is way different. But even for Syria, by standards of like a Middle Eastern irregular asymmetric combat zone, this is still pretty like lackadaisical. Okay, this is like better, right? This is some sort of anti-armor missile that's set up straight down this road. This person is behind as best as they can get behind cover, and his other team member is actually behind the engine block of this car. This is probably the best setup I've seen of a military checkpoint. What's also interesting is he has a secondary plate of armor. He's got his standard looks like it's, what are the 6B43 vest, and then an additional armor plate on his back, right? And there's another one set up here. And then his other team member is just sort of standing there. I guess maybe talking to this guy down the road here. Okay, so all in all, what do I got to say? I think that I didn't see anything that really like made me say, "Wow, this is a poor planning," right? Without full context of what was supposed to happen, it's tough to say. But I saw some instances of things that looked like really good military operations to secure this airport. And then I saw a bunch of instances of things that looked pretty lackadaisical and pretty cavalier. Again, if you told me that these Russians were told this was an exercise or drills, that's exactly the attitude they seem to be assuming. They look like they're maybe doing drills and that they're basically only as disciplined in so much as they are trying to avoid their commander getting mad at them. That said, I hope you guys learned something. I hope you got something out of this. Thanks to our patrons from Patreon. Thanks to our lieutenant tier patrons who, I shout out every video. Cold Foster, Command Unit, Caffeinated, Jacob Flavius, Chris, Dr. Shadowcop, Porter World Time, Brandon Armitage, Telrune, and Astro Hunter. They get access to an exclusive Discord room and a exclusive content. Other than that, follow me on Twitch, twitch.tv/combatvetpaul, and thanks for watching.